all the best boxing content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and punch that bell for notifications.
Go ahead.
A lot of accoutrements to deal with in the disrobing of Germain Sanders.
Wonder if he has money in those pockets, you know. You got to be careful there. Could have credit cards, a wallet.
All right, you want to go off everything and dress. We know all the rules, all right? Let's abide by them. The trunks are a little bit high, so the blow here would be fair. Keep them above the belt line here. Questions? Good luck, guys.
You know, it's a funny thing. Sanders is the only fighter I know. He doesn't need a cut man. He needs a coat check man.
Yes, that's right. Somebody's giving him a tab. He's going to go get that coat in about 10 rounds. Ermonsele Albert is hoping that it is sooner than that. He had that disappointing stretch that we talked about in the last 18 months. The first round knockout against James Kirk when he went down there a couple times, and then draw against Ozzy Duran. He went back to Nigeria, wanted to be with his family, wanted to see his family. His mom had some health issues. He ends up training for 4 weeks in Africa with Dad, and then comes back and finishes up 2 weeks in Miami with Orlando Cuellar. And now gets this short notice opponent, a change of opponents. It was supposed to be Carlos Quintana, instead the journeyman Germain Sanders.
Well, expect this early on. I just don't know if the 38-year-old Sanders taking this fight on 5 days notice, if he can keep it up. You know, I don't know how much air are in those tires, but this is what you can expect early on from Sanders. A little bit of movement, keeping the aggressive Albert off balance, and probably doing more defense than offense early on will be Sanders. What he's going to have to do is try to find a way to create a little offense and spots the pot shot to counter a little bit.
Career welterweight against a true junior middleweight in Albert.
Yeah, Albert he's the bigger man. Beginning of his career, he was at 172 pounds, Joe. Most of his career for Albert, junior middleweight. Big size advantage, but he's still not a banger. You know, punches are born, they are not made. He was not born a puncher, Mr. Albert. And the smaller man, Sanders, welterweight, just about his entire career. Well, Albert, as we said, has been a solid junior middleweight.
What Albert was born was into a family that prides themselves on hard work. You can see him reaching there for a moment up to his left eye on that break there. But his father, who recently trained him when I was back in Nigeria, used to take Ermonsele, wake him up at 4:30 in the morning, and make him do road work, run to get to school. He would run 16 miles barefoot, he told us, and his dad would be following on a motorbike to make sure they weren't cheating and picking up a ride.
We'll talk about running. Right now, early on, Sanders running a little bit to try to keep the bigger Albert off balance. You wonder, while he's surviving the big shots right now, you wonder how that's going to play on him later on. He took this fight, as we said, on 5 days' notice. He's 38 years old. Is that going to deplete him later on down the stretch? Just trying to survive early on. And what you see is what you get with Albert. He's going to come forward. He throws a lot of punches. And I think he's going to want to attack that body for the reasons that you can see already. To take some of the air out of the tires, out of those legs of Sanders.
Typical busy round for Ermonsele Albert, end of one. The scores that were read when a majority decision went in Angel Hernandez, they retabulated and they went back and looked at the scorecards, and they realized that 95-95, the draw actually should have been 96-95. So a unanimous decision for Angel Hernandez, 33 years old, former world title challenger back in 03, and now he defeats a guy who just a year ago was thought of as a pretty decent prospect and had a win over Ray Joval.
You know, when Sanders first got this call for this fight, his trainer, George Hernandez, said they originally turned it down. Why'd they turn it down, Joe? Because too small. They said, hey, we're not fighting junior middleweights. We're only a welterweight. We're not going out of our weight class to do that. But they changed their mind. As George Hernandez said, they changed their mind when more money was offered to take the fight.
has a way of changing minds. Round number 2 here of our main event. Germain Sanders moving on the outside. Ermonsele Albert trying to target him. Albert, 34 years old. He lives and trains in Miami, Nigerian native. And he had a lot of success in the past few years before the TKO loss to James Kirkland. He had won 11 straight fights. He impressed us against Yuri Boy Campus and Daniel Edward, the Haitian sensation. In fact, he scored a 7th-round TKO in that fight back in July of 07. Things were heading the right direction as he was a junior middleweight contender and now trying to regain that status here in 09.
But you got to wonder about the fight here for Sanders and the game plan right here as I watch him move around the ring quite a bit the first 2 rounds to keep the bigger man off balance and doing a good job of now pot-shotting, putting a little offense with the defense. But, you know, it makes me think that while he's trying to win the battles right now, will he lose the war in the end because he's using a lot of energy to win the early battles.
Just got caught by a straight right hand from Albert.
And will that loss of energy that the 38-year-old Sanders is starting to create for himself with all this excessive movement, again, will he pay a price for that down the stretch and ultimately lose the war as Albert maybe starts to wear him down? That is what Albert is looking to do. See, I don't think Albert minds seeing all this movement right now because he knows that workload of Sanders, there's going to be a price paid by Sanders later on.
There was another good right hand that scored from Albert there in that last sequence. As now you can see Sanders ties up here as we come to the end of round number 2 in our main event. The underdog on short notice coming in against Ermonsele Albert. But John Gruden and Mike Shanahan unemployed right now in the NFL, Teddy.
All I care about is Eric Mangini, and he is employed.
He is.
He has a job with the Cleveland Browns, and I think he's going to do a tremendous job of turning that organization
Your
around.
good friend, of course, you were a special assistant under Eric Mangini the past few years. And I'm sure you've had plenty of conversations in the roller coaster ride he's been on in the past couple weeks to start 2009. It is that time of the year in the NFL. And it's that time of the fight for Ermonsele Albert, as you said, to kind of gauge Sanders, see what he's up to, and going to look at all this excessive movement. But he had some success towards the end of the second round corralling him.
But again, at what price?
Right.
Because using those legs as much as Sanders on quick notice is using them, does it enact a price later on where that gas tank starts to go towards the E? And Albert has a way of evaporating a gas tank with all that pressure that he puts on you. What you see is what you get with Albert. Nothing fancy. He can't break an egg. As the old timers would say, he can't bang it all. But he throws a lot of punches, puts a lot of pressure on. And when he gets inside, he'll go downstairs and then upstairs. That is his forte. Joe, Albert, to get inside, watch him. He'll throw a couple downstairs and then usually sneak a right hand upstairs. Either right uppercut or a straight right hand. And that's what you expect from Sanders, the smaller man on the inside. Try to slow down Albert on the inside and tie him up a little bit. Then get outside where maybe you can pot shot a little bit. Maybe you can make a miss and then deliver a counter. You know, I talked about trainer George Hernandez of Sanders saying that they only took this fight when the money was up. That's not the way that you really want to go into a fight. That really, your incentive for taking the fight was the money. You want usually your incentive to be other things. And don't think that that will not show itself as this fight plays out.
That kind of falls in line with the realities of where Germain Sanders is in his career, right? 38 years old, journeyman guy with 6 losses.
He has to take what's offered him as far as that goes to that extent. And talking about that, that's something that plays a little well for Sanders as much as it can. he has been in this position before. He has taken fights on quick notice before.
Joe and Teddy with you here in Key West, not far away from the Key West Military Memorial. Is the ringside action here on Friday Night Fights, round 4 between Germain Sanders, the 38-year-old journeyman, and Ermonsele Albert, who is trying to forget 2008. He had won 11 straight fights and then ran into James Kirkland. Albert had over 500 amateur fights, was a 2-time Olympian, and now age 34, looking for a break in the junior middleweight division.
We're talking about breaks, and I'm glad you used that word. Sanders is going to need a little help, a break, to pull off an upset here, or maybe even to be competitive as the rounds go on. And you know where that help can come. It comes from strange places sometimes, and sometimes it can come from the environment. And we're outdoors. It's a little bit brisk. It's very windy. I think that can play a hand in this fight. And if it does play a hand, it'll be in the favor of Sanders, because that wind, that chilliness can invigorate a fighter. And it can kind of, I hate to use, you know, something that's so obvious, but it can give Sanders a second wind. You know, it can just revigorate him a little bit, cool him down, and keep him going in the fight.
And I know the majority of our viewers are probably watching this saying 65 degrees, I'll take that any day with the way the winter's been throughout the country. Now, we've had the other extreme. We've had fights that we've done in extreme heat. But here at 65 degrees with 30-mile-an-hour winds, it's really a cooling effect on the fighters in the ring. Couple good body shots from Ermonsele Albert, as Sanders yet to throw back much coming up the corner, so he just bull rushes with the shoulder back to the center of the ring.
Well, look, the way it's looking right now, Sanders is going to need that help I talked about for the win, maybe to the point where it blows Albert out of the ring. He's definitely going to need something that refreshes him, because something that is not refreshing him is that body attack, that constant body attack of Albert. He may be only a mosquito as far as equating punching power. You know, he doesn't sting like a bee, but he's like a swarm of mosquitoes. You get all welted up. And again, you know where Albert wants to be. He wants to be in close, and that means he needs cooperation from Sanders, which he's getting right now. Sanders standing still in front of him is something that Albert has to like.
'80, 100 years. They used to have the old Friday Night Fights weekly here, and fighters would fight for a quarter a round back in the day when Ernest Hemingway was the referee here in Key West for many of those local fight cards. Round 5 scheduled for 10. See the body shots. Teddy, you talked about the body work from Albert in the last round. He put 15 of them in the bank.
One of the questions that you have to ask, if you know anything about this business, Joe, when you have a fighter like Sanders taking the fight on very short notice at 38 years of age and moving up in weight class to fight that opponent, and in this case Albert, you have to ask, did he come here to win or to survive? And right now I think Sanders is asking himself that same question, and it's tilting towards the side of surviving. And we can't be shocked by that when we take fights on quick notice like this, especially fighters that late of an age. They will come here to survive. And right now, unless it drastically changes, again, that seems to be the mindset of Sanders. I will do everything to survive, but have not thought of anything to win so far.
Get a sense that Albert is sensing that as he just for a moment puts his hands down, just continues to chase and try to cut off the ring against Sanders.
4 things going against Sanders. Smaller, 38 years old, took the fight on short notice, and he hasn't fought for 9.5 months.
and he's fighting against a guy that's very hungry to get back on track. Albert there a couple times coming behind the arm on that body punch and finishes up with the combination, the left hook upstairs.
Well, he's trying to do like the late great Sugar Ray Robinson did. When the opening was there, Sugar Ray Robinson, one of his best punches was that right hand, but of course he delivered it with much more speed and power than Albert can do. But he would deliver it behind the elbow of a fighter and debilitate the fighter. Again, Albert, his forte on the inside is to go downstairs with two and then sneak the right hand upstairs.
And he's just flicking out that jab, and more of Albert on the inside as we come to the end of 5 here in our main event. And you can get up-to-date boxing news. You get info on the go. Visit ESPN.com/boxing. Round 6 here in our main event, and Ermonsele Albert in control against Germain Sanders, the 38-year-old journeyman welterweight who came up to fight this fight on short notice here at junior middleweight.
And Sanders coming into this fight as you can't be shocked, you know, taking it on quick notice. Sanders coming into this fight the heaviest of his career.
Well, you made the comment that Albert fought upwards of 170. Sanders before tonight never fought over 151. And a clean sweep so far on Teddy's scorecard for the Nigerian native. If you haven't seen Ermonsele Albert fight before and you're looking and saying, what was there, a clash of heads earlier in this fight? What you see on the right side of his forehead is congenital. He's had that since childhood. It doesn't bother him at all. He's always cleared by every commission to fight with the growth on the forehead. That is not caused from boxing. He's had it since birth.
The only possible disadvantage that Albert had getting ready for this fight, a lot of people would say, Teddy, how could he have a disadvantage? He had full time to get ready for a fighter that had very short time. But Albert was originally getting ready for Quintana, southpaw, so he did spend some of his preparation in the gym sparring with lefties, and now all of a sudden he did have to make the adjustment to an orthodox fighter. He's made that adjustment seamlessly.
Carlos Quintana, a very skilled southpaw at that. A different class of fighter than Germain Sanders. Sanders, a journeyman who's had his ups and downs. Had a majority decision win over Manuel Plotty. He took that fight on just a week's notice, but not the same success here against Albert so far tonight. So things can change.
Sanders, Joe, is going to have to land a big shot to slow down Albert and turn this fight around.
Does he have it in him, Teddy?
It's gotten to that point. He has the experience. He can pop a little bit, but unfortunately, as we've documented pretty well, it's been at a lower weight class, but he can pop a little bit. But he has the ability to catch somebody clean because he can make you miss and then counter you suddenly. And he's going to need that ability if he's going to turn this fight around. It's going to come from a counterpunch. Either he's going to time a right hand over the jab of Albert, who sometimes doesn't move his head when he jabs like that. You can time a right hand over it. Or he's going to catch Albert as he pulls back. Albert has a habit sometimes of straightening up and pulling back straight. But either way, Sanders is going to have to find a way to bring a lightning bolt out of the sky.
He's got 4 rounds to try to find it.
Going upstairs and just grabbing round after round.
And these are typical numbers of an Ermonsele Albert fight. Now, typically, obviously, you could have his opponent doing more work, as we've seen in the past, as he's been in more competitive bouts, but he puts out this kind of work rate. 460 plus punches right now, over 185 landed. Round number 7, scheduled for 10 here in our main event in Key West.
Again, the opportunity for Sanders will have to come with a punch that Albert doesn't see, and his best chance to do that is off defense. What I mean for that is for Sanders to make a defensive move, which he can do well, and then suddenly capitalize off that defensive move, time Albert with a shot he doesn't see, out of the blue. Make him miss, make him pay. Right now, Sanders concentrating just on trying to make him miss.
Remind you that coming up after Friday night fights will be Sports Center. Of course, going to set the scene for the AFC and NFC championship game. Big news on John Gruden, fired by the Tampa Bay Bucks today. That's coming up after the fight.
Most of Sanders' fights happen in Chicago, where they're talking about wind. There's plenty of wind there in Chicago, and again, Sanders needs help from that wind to revigorate him, as he looks like he's slowing down a little bit from the pressure here of Albert. And as I said earlier, right now Sanders would hope that a gust of wind would just blow Albert the heck out of here.
Now, you talked about that survival mode and the mindset. Germain Sanders putting forth that kind of a disposition here.
If this fight doesn't get more competitive, I'm going to start calling for some strong winds to blow somebody out of here.
Nope. Style of Albert. Talked about all the things going against Germain Sanders. Taking the fight on short notice, the age, the size difference, and of course the steady beat of Ermonsele Albert and his punch output.
And there a moment ago you saw the ability of Sanders to roll with the punch. He rolled with that right hand, but what he didn't do, and there he did it. He shot the right hand, and he's got to do that, and probably has to put a left hook behind it to catch up in this fight.
Straight out of the fight plan there. Windy night here in Key West. Our main event here, Germain Sanders struggling all night with the volume punching output of Ermonsele Albert. Albert, a guy who a year ago was right there contending among the 154-pounders and had a big fight against Kirkland that went south on him. TKO'd in the first round. James Kirkland, of course, very powerful puncher. And then he came back in September and had a draw with Ozzy Duran. And here getting Germain Sanders on short notice and has been controlling the action all night long. There's a good combination and a right uppercut from Albert. And now he really turns it on against Sanders.
You can only keep the ocean from coming to the shore so long. After a while, the ocean usually has its way. And tonight, Albert has been the ocean. And the shore of Sanders is eroding. I mean, those waves, and it has to feel like waves, those body shots. Those waves of Albert are just crashing against the side of Sanders, and there they go again. And again, watch Albert on the inside, Joe. He has a pattern, a very predictable pattern, but in this fight, a very effective pattern. Watch when he gets close. He'll go downstairs, and then he'll sneak the right hand upstairs, and there it is, right on cue. And again, downstairs, and then you can always expect Sanders, or I should say Albert, to finish upstairs with the right hand.
This has been a very productive round for Ermonsele Albert. Left hook, right uppercut combination.
Well, that's what Albert does. He gets inside, he bangs two downstairs, and then it's either going to be a right uppercut or a short right hand upstairs. All the time from Albert. If you're in the corner of Sanders, you have to be aware of that. And you have to tell him, listen, when he touches you downstairs, move your head on the side, dip a little bit, get a little bit small, because you know he's coming upstairs.
End of 8. Stay with us.
Maybe not as many as I think, but a lot of older fans that I think will go on my side. There's no comparison. Archie Moore hands down the greatest, one of the greatest fighters of all time, one of the greatest light heavyweights of all time. But I don't know how you could even argue a case for anyone to be a greater fighter than Archie Moore, more productive fighter than Archie Moore from 40 years of age and older. Archie Moore, his final record was 185 wins, 23 losses, 11 draws, 131 knockouts. Now, I know it was a different time when there was more action for fighters, more clubs, but listen to this, Joe. Archie Moore, from 40 years of age and older, a record of 26 wins, 2 losses, and 2 draws after turning 40. He was 19-0-1 in his first 20 fights after turning 40. He beat Ivan Durrell, who was 29 years old.
One of the most exciting fights of all time.
He fought a draw with Willie Pastrana. I mean, Archie Moore, I think, without a doubt, the greatest fighter of 40 years of age and older of all time.
Ermonsele Albert trying to be a good 34-year-old, and so far is tonight against Germain Sanders here. Round number 9. Sanders has not had a chance throughout much of this fight, just in survival mode against the volume-punching Albert. By the way, a happy birthday to Bernard Hopkins, our newest ESPN boxing analyst, turned 44 yesterday.
And I'm taking nothing away from Bernard Hopkins. He might even agree with me.
He may.
You know? I'm taking nothing away from him. Give him all his due credit. But Archie Moore, the old mongoose, was a monster.
Well, a lot of what happened with Moore's career pushed his career back because of those times, and obviously the constraints, societal constraints playing against Archie Moore at the time. But a dynamic record, as is the case.
You know, while this fight continues to go in its one-sided direction, that the wind has been blowing it, and Albert has been taking it, I'd like to send out for all of us wishes, thoughts, prayers to our colleague, Gennaro Hernandez, the former world champion who's fighting a different kind of battle than he's ever fought before. Gennaro, we love you, and we know you're going to win this fight.
Everybody on our crew with our very best for Gennaro. He has sat ringside with us for many times, for many years. And of course, one of the greats in the modern era in the ring. Albert continues to chase down Germain Sanders here. Combination to close out this 9th round. 1 round to go here in Key West. 10th and final round. Sports Center set to come your way as soon as Ermonsele Albert finishes up his business against Germain Sanders here in Key West. Joe Tessitore and Teddy Atlas with you ringside. A Friday night fight. Little programming note here. We will not be on the air next week, but give us 2 weeks and we're going to be bringing you a good one. We will be in Montreal. Juan Urango against Herman and Gojo. And you know that Bell Center always rocking up in Montreal. That'll be a special 8:30 start time on January 30th for the next Friday night fights.
Look, there's opportunities, and there's been opportunities all night long for Albert to dominate, and he has dominated. In this last round, he's looking for a knockout. It's that simple. He has no respect for the smaller Sanders. Sanders, who has been looking to survive and hoping to survive this last minute and 50 seconds. And if that knockout's going to come, I think it can come from Albert going to the body and then bringing an uppercut up. Taking a little step back and allowing Sanders to fall into a punch.
He had that left hand tied up. He didn't care. He's letting loose with that right hand against Sanders.
Well, watch on the inside how Sanders will fall forward a little bit and try to smother Albert, try to stop the offense of Albert by falling in. If Albert would take a little step back on the inside after the body work and then throw the uppercut, he'll walk Sanders right into that punch. Also, there's plenty of opportunities now for Albert to also catch Sanders as he goes out.
Minutes ago, Albert cruising to a win, but as you said, he'd love to have an impressive knockout win here to start off his year.
Again, Albert throws a lot of punches, behaves like a fighter, but he does not punch like a banger. And that is what has allowed Sanders to last these rounds. And the great heart of Sanders, I should say that too. Sanders, although he's been shut out, I think, every round, has displayed the courage and the testament, the fortitude that you want to see in a fighter.
Yeah, tough spot for Sanders tonight. Smaller guy taking it on a short notice against a well-skilled, hungry fighter. Last 10 seconds. Sanders has been thinking about that final bell for many, many rounds now.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Mallory Square in the Conch Republic, Key West, Florida, after 10 rounds of boxing, we go to the scorecards. All three judges, Michael Pernick, Mike Ross, and Bill Ray, score the bout 190. For the winner by unanimous decision, Ermonsele, a bad boy, Albert.
He was a title contender coming into last year, but that went winless, 0-1-1. Now he starts off 0-9 exactly the way he wants.